The brief outline takes us to the beginning of the 20th century. The medical center is located near the supermarket on North Street. The seminar will be on the last week of the quarter. The technology they introduced meant that metal and leather goods were produced there for the first time. This article covers the whom, where, and when of the conflict. This course will examine some of the profound ethical dilemmas. This year, we are planning to use a different type of assessment on this module. We are also going to be more prescriptive about what you focus on in your presentation. We are not going to accept the assignment after the due date on Friday. We would like people to write a case study describing an organization they know.
in Paris. But there was no modern lit. Wilson came then from a different world, and he became the focal point of a broad mainstream American culture that thought that modern literature and wanted modern literature to be able to be read and appreciated by ordinary people. They were not modernists in an abstract sense, and certainly some of them, like T.S. Eliot and Faulkner, were too difficult for some of their writings to be read by ordinary people. But this was a world before the division between the brows or between elite or whatever had established itself as part of our consciousness. Wilson was a major player in the successful effort of his generation to establish at the heart of American life an innovative literature that would equal the great cultures of Europe. And he knew that the great cultures of Europe were there. He was not a product of a narrow American studies kind of training at all. He joined a high artistic standard with an openness to all experience and a belief that literature was as much a part of life for everyone as conversation. He thought that Proust and Joyce and Yeats and Eliot could and should be read by ordinary Americans and helped that to happen. Wilson was a very various man. Over a period of almost 50 years, he was a literary journalist, an investigative reporter, a brilliant memoirist, and dedicated journal keeper. His biographical histories to the Finland Station and
A lot of us are not aware of the extraordinary successes of the Millennium Development Goals, several of which have achieved their targets long before the due date. That proves that this species of humanity is capable of achieving extraordinary progress if it really acts together and it really tries hard. But if I had to put it in a nutshell, these days I sort of feel that globalization has taken us by surprise, and we've been slow to respond to it. If you look at the downside of globalization, it really does seem to be sometimes overwhelming. All of the grand challenges that we face today, like climate change and human rights and demographics and terrorism and pandemics and narco-trafficking and human slavery and species loss, I could go on. We're not making an awful lot of progress against an awful lot of those challenges. So in a nutshell, that's the challenge that we all face today at this interesting point in history. That's clearly what we've got to do next. We've somehow got to get our act together, and we've got to figure out how to globalize the solutions better so that we don't simply become a species which is the victim of the globalization of problems.
you have even the slightest interest in science, by now you've probably heard of an exciting new scientific facility called the Large Hadron Collider, or LHC. But what do you know about it? Well, first, the LHC is a particle accelerator. It is located at the CERN laboratory in Europe, just west of Geneva, Switzerland. This accelerator takes two beams, each containing about 300 trillion protons, and shoots them at one another. Even though there are lots of protons in the beams, individual collisions are only between two protons, one traveling in one direction and one traveling in the opposite direction. For the subatomic world, these protons have an enormous amount of energy, although from a human perspective it's really very small, about as much energy as a mosquito flying at full speed. However, this energy is concentrated into an incredibly small volume. The result is that when the protons collide, they experience temperatures of tens of trillions of degrees centigrade, which is over 100,000 times hotter than the center of the sun. In order to get a feel for what those conditions are like, we could ask, if we wanted to make a ball the size of a basketball with that energy density, how much energy are we talking about? The answer is simple: a lot. And I'm not kidding. It would take the energy of the sun itself. And I'm not talking about the energy of the sun hitting the earth. I'm talking about all of the energy of the sun. And not just for a second, a minute, a day, or a year. If you take the entire energy output of the entire sun for over 20 million years and concentrate that energy into the size of a basketball, that's what it's like in the center of an LHC collision.
Have you ever had the feeling that there's something bigger out there, something you can't see? Well, there is. It's called dark matter. Dark matter is spread throughout space, engulfing the Milky Way and all other galaxies. It's 4 times more common in the universe than visible matter, yet we've never seen or directly observed it. So how do we know it's there? Because of gravity. A galaxy is like a giant merry-go-round that all the stars are riding. In order to stay on, each star has to hold on tight. That's where gravity comes in. Otherwise, it'll fly off into space. The problem is, the force of gravity from all the stars we can see isn't strong enough to hold galaxies together. All the stars should be flying off the edge of the merry-go-round, but they're not. It's as if some invisible rope is helping them hold on. Physicists believe that rope is the gravitational force from stuff we can't see, hence dark matter. And how do we know the speeds of stars in distant galaxies? The Doppler effect, which is why a police siren shifts to a lower pitch as the car passes, also works for light. That's how radar catches you speeding, and how astronomers measure the rotation of galaxies. So, we use what we can see to tell us about what we can't.
What tool is used to measure temperature?
What is the name given to the cycle shown in this picture?
Most plants produce these colourful seed-bearing components every spring.
What is the name for the speed of an object in a given direction?
What should we consume more of when we are dehydrated?
In sports, what is it called when a player has broken the rules?
What device is used to magnify an object that cannot be seen with the naked eye?
What is the name given to a summary of the contents of a book, article, or formal speech?